Official visitors, June is a big recruiting month. We now know that. So give me an idea of how big of a weekend this is. And I want to ask you about some guys one by one and run it down the list.
Yeah, so I mean, last weekend there were 2 official visitors, and this weekend you have 12, and the next weekend I think we're talking 20 or so. So it just keeps getting bigger as we go through June. But this weekend will be pretty massive for a lot of guys who are fresh off of Georgia or Alabama official visits to kind of see Tennessee and hope that Tennessee can compete with those bigger schools.
Well, let's go. Let's start out. I want to ask you about several guys that'll be in town and your thoughts on whether or not the Vols can land these guys. Williams Winery, a big name, obviously, as you wrote on offthehooksports.com, 6'5", 250 pounds, defensive lineman. An interesting size there as he could grow into a defensive tackle, but sounds like an edge rusher to me. A lot of schools after him: Georgia, Oklahoma, Oregon, Missouri. What do you think of Winery?
He's a curious case because his first visit to Tennessee was in January. And I don't think very many people thought anything of it. And then he just loved Tennessee and loved Rodney Gardner. And now Tennessee is catapulted to like 1 or 2 on his list. So this weekend will be his official visit. And if he can continue to build those relationships, and if Rodney Gardner continues to recruit him heavily, I think we could see him at Tennessee. And obviously you see Josh Heupel's Missouri connection still showing here. And there's a couple of assistants with very good Missouri connection. So, I mean, he's the number 2 prospect in this class. And it really seems like a two-way battle right now between Tennessee and Oklahoma. And you saw some last weekend of Oklahoma trying to not, I guess, recruit against Tennessee. So Oklahoma sees Tennessee as the biggest competition right now. So I would hope, or I would think that Tennessee is probably 1 or 2, and this official visit will be very big to see if they can actually be 1.
Jaru, moving on, defensive lineman Kamarion Franklin is out of Lake Cormorant, Mississippi, which is in DeSoto County. For those who don't know, I grew up in Memphis. DeSoto County is right outside of Memphis. I have a lot of family who lives there. How is Tennessee kind of building a pipeline into that, trying to work on a pipeline into that West Tennessee tri-state region? You know, Memphis, Arkansas, Mississippi, right around there?
I would assume so, just because of the fact that right now, I mean, you look at a guy like Franklin, like how big is the draw to Ole Miss or Mississippi State right now? Like, yes, Lane Kiffin is building and they have momentum at Ole Miss, but still, compared to Tennessee, I mean, it's a pretty easy competition there. And then you look at, I mean, Arkansas has some recruiting power, but not much. And then, I mean, Missouri is kind of a joke. So
Dave loves that.
Drew just got a raise.
So realistically, Franklin, it seems like Tennessee is a pretty high contender for him. He's also going to officially visit LSU and Auburn. So, I mean, even looking at those schools, you're still not seeing your Mississippis, your Arkansas, your Missouris competing for him. So I feel like the higher prospects in the West Tennessee area, like you said, are priorities for Josh Heupel and his staff, and specifically trying to keep Tennessee kids in Tennessee. And when you think about Memphis, it's super far away, but it's still in-state recruiting. So I feel like that is a priority for them.
Yeah. What the hell is a show me state anyway? Offensive tackle Daniel Calhoun on the message board. We had someone ask if Caleb was related, which would give Tennessee a good tie, and I don't think he is. What do you think?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, what do you think? We're all related, basically, right? Daniel Calhoun would be a big one. 6', 6.5", 330 pounds. Those are the type of big dogs, I'm telling you, that Tennessee needs to win some of those battles, and he would be a good one. Where does Tennessee stand with him?
Yeah, I don't think they'll win this battle. It seems like Calhoun is starting to trend more towards Georgia, and he'll probably end up a Georgia guy. He's a Georgia prospect in state, so it seems like Georgia is the favorite right now. But as we've seen in recruiting, anything can happen. So if his official visit weekend goes good, he's a big Glenn Ellerby guy. So if his official visit weekend goes good, then we could see Tennessee go back to his top schools. But he also has officials playing with Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Auburn. So this is definitely a heavyweight battle, and I feel like right now, if you asked me where he was going, it'd probably be Georgia.
By the way, the state bird for Missouri is the eastern bluebird. Will somebody tell them they're not in the East? They're not in the SEC East. They're not in the Eastern United States. How can it be the eastern bluebird? I'm sorry, Caleb. Go ahead.
I will say
there's no divisions anymore.
Well, that's true. But there are
now they're just in the Southeast.
But there are divisions with birds.
I will say I respect the St. Louis Cardinals, and Nelly had a pretty epic run in the early 2000s in hip hop. Okay, he had a lock on the hip hop game for quite some time.
It's getting hot in here with recruiting, Caleb. Here we go.
And by the way, guys, take a look at Daniel Calhoun. I don't think it's possible that he and I are related. I'm just going to say. So yeah. Anyways, okay. Moving on. Josh Heupel does have Florida ties, and they need some help in the secondary. So let's talk about quarterback Kai Bates. What do you think Tennessee's chances are for him?
Yeah, he's a name that's kind of recently been trending towards Tennessee. He received an offer in March during his first visit and kind of locked in an official visit that same weekend. So he's out of Edgewater High School in Florida, like you said, and he's officially visited Alabama, and he's also going to officially visit, Florida State. So he's 6'1.5", 180 pounds. He's a top 150 prospect. He also has an official visit to LSU next weekend. So there's a lot of schools in for him, and seeing Tennessee get an official visit after really just offering him a couple months ago is pretty big. I think Tennessee has some work to do, but they have the whole weekend to do it. So we'll see what happens.
Braylon Staley, wide receiver, Aiken High School, South Carolina. Tennessee has had success in Aiken even before you were born, Jairo.
Well, I don't know about how much success they're going to have right now. It seems like Clemson has sort of become the leader for Staley right now in his recruitment. He was extended a scholarship offer from Tennessee in February, 6', 175, 4-star wide receiver. Obviously, Josh Heupel's offense is easy to recruit, so we can see that change. But right now, I'd say he's probably a Clemson lean.
All right, linebacker Edwin Spillman, number 24 linebacker in the nation, 6'1", 216 pounds, number 5 prospect in Tennessee, Lipscomb Academy. That's the area where Calhoun says all bad prospects come out of.
Well, Spillman is the younger brother of current freshman wideout Nate Spillman. So Tennessee has obviously been the favorite in his recruitment the whole way, but he's made it clear that he's going to go through his recruitment, not let his brother kind of influence his decision. So he's officially visited Florida State and Ohio State. Ohio State's kind of been big in his recruitment as well. And he's also has an official visit planned to Georgia. I would say Tennessee is still number one in his recruitment just because he's an in-state guy and his brother is at Tennessee. But he said it before that he's not going to let that influence his decision and not let what his brother's recruitment went through influence what he's going to do. So that'll be an interesting one to see. He's the number 253 prospect nationally. So big guy, linebacker. I mean, depth on the defensive side is always big. So I'm curious to see what happens with him.
Yeah, pretty much everybody that says that ends up going to the school that they say they're not going to go to.
And this is our second visit within like 3 weeks. So, because he visited 3 weeks ago.
Well, I appreciate him. Yeah, I appreciate him saying he's going to look around. He should, but he'll go to Tennessee. Offensive tackle Marquise Easley, 6'7", 300-pound 4-star lineman out of Illinois.
This is an interesting one because obviously you see the northern.
Any prospect out of Illinois is an interesting one.
I was just about to say. I mean, as a northern offensive lineman, dude, 6'7", so number 261 prospect nationally. He's a guy like we just talked about that would be a big pickup for Tennessee, and I would say Tennessee has a really good chance of getting him right now. Like I said earlier, though, Georgia is hot on his trail too. He's going to officially visit Alabama. He's announcing July 8th, so he's taking his official visits in, deciding on his college, and making a decision in July. So we'll see what happens. But Georgia hosted him already as well, and they're trending for him too. I assume Tennessee will probably try to recruit against Georgia with both of these offensive tackles and try to get at least one. Because like you said, I mean, you can teach a guy how to block, but you can't teach him to be 6'7", 300 pounds.
Hey, there are cats that are overlooked in Atlanta all the time. I want to ask you about Mr. Burns, Jordan Burns, 4-star prospect. He's going to Vanderbilt in Arkansas. Maybe not getting the love from Georgia, but I watched tape on him the other day, and I think he's really good.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a guy that's probably getting overlooked right in Atlanta. He's officially visited Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and he's officially visiting Tennessee. Arkansas and Tennessee seem to be 1 and 2 for him right now, but like you said, his tape is really good, and he's got a lot of skills that would transfer instantly to the college game. I mean, 6'1.5", 215-pound linebacker. I think at this point, I guess Georgia can compete for the number 1 and 2, like the Sammy Browns of the class, and just overlook guys right in their backyard that can probably play just as good.
So then you have the commitments, quarterback Jake Merklinger. You have athlete Jonathan Eccles, cornerback Caleb Beasley, offensive tackle Jesse Perry. I love how they bring guys in here that can hopefully win over other prospects. I think that's a very smart way of doing things that used to be done, wasn't done by the previous 3 coaching staffs. Merklinger, though, just his name comes up over and over. I know he's a quarterback, but how active do you think he is in recruiting? And of course, everybody wants him to be as active as some guy named Nico. But that could be a challenge. What do you think of Merklinger as a recruiter?
I think he is pretty active. And like you said, he's at Tennessee just about every weekend. So he's making connections with prospects. And I know he goes to camps, and he was invited to that big NIL event that On3 put on in Nashville that also hosted every top prospect in the nation. So he's making relationships, building friendships, and trying to peer recruit these guys. But really this weekend, like we've talked about already, I think the biggest one might be Jesse Perry, 3-star offensive tackle, because you have those other offensive tackles on campus that Tennessee really wants to get, those 6'7", 6'6" guys like we talked about earlier with Easley. I think Perry and Ellerby, if Perry just peer recruits like you saw Nico do last year to some of those offensive tackles, or even Merklinger talks about wanting to throw behind some of those offensive tackles, some of those big guys. I mean, that could go a long way in this recruitment because prospects expect coaches to tell them, what they want to hear, that you're going to play a lot, you're going to have good facilities, all that stuff. But when you hear it from somebody else your age or even a current player, it's kind of a different experience. So I'm glad they do the peer recruiting because I do think it helps. And especially with Merklinger, who's in Knoxville just about every weekend, I think he's building a lot of relationships.
Well, you had news on Boo. Oh, did I scare you, Carter? And I want to get to that, but I know Caleb has another recruiting question. Coverage of recruiting today brought to you by Craft Treats. Go to crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. Get 20% off any of their treats, including the chill pills with the CBD derivative that will help with your pet's digestive issues, arthritis, or anxiety. crafttreats.com. crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. So before we get to Boo, Calhoun, you were going to say?
Yes, I got a broad question first before I get there. I do want to point out that Javonte Spraggins is from Illinois also. So Tennessee already has a guy starting from there.
That's a good point.
I wanted to, Jaru, I'm sure you saw how J.J. Harrell committed to Mississippi State, I believe, after decommitting from Tennessee. And when we had you on to talk recruiting a couple of weeks ago, I started to ask, is it a concern that there hasn't been much recruiting movement in June? And it was early, so we said, let's give him some time. I still say, and Dave does too, that this is the most important recruiting month of Josh Heupel's tenure. Well, we're now halfway through June and still no significant pickups. Is it time to start raising a red flag?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, Boo Carter is going on Saturday, but a lot of these guys are guys who are taking all of their official visits before they announce their commitments. And we also saw, compared to like your Alabamas and your Georgias, Tennessee's last 2 weekends of June are where they have their biggest prospects, with next weekend being their biggest official weekend visit that they've marketed to the prospects all season. Compared to Alabama and Georgia, which use the first 2 weekends of June to host the majority of prospects. So I think it's not that big of a deal just yet. If we get through July and we have 4 or 5 guys who took officials to Tennessee not committing to Tennessee, we might want to raise the red flag. But I think right now it's more of just playing the game and trying to get in with these guys who announced their commitments in July or in early August.
All right, so Boo, you had news on Boo, and he's going on Saturday. What do you got from Boo?
Yeah, so he officially visited Michigan last weekend, and then he was on campus for an unofficial with Tennessee this Wednesday and Thursday of this week. So he was taking a last look at Tennessee before heading up to the 40-40 Club in New York to announce his decision. I would say right now it is Michigan and Tennessee. The only thing that worries me is Michigan is recruiting him as a wide receiver versus Tennessee as a defensive back. So I guess it'll really come down to if he wants to catch passes versus break them up. And then Michigan has gotten a lot of momentum and steam for Boo Carter in this last month or so. I still would say Tennessee is the favorite, but Michigan is kind of a little more worrisome right now.
Wait a second. He's announcing at the 40-40 Club? Are we not
Yeah.
sending somebody like me to the 40-40 club to cover this? They got the Jay-Z lounge in there. Oh man, I'm all about that. It is funny that club's named after steroid-induced performance in sports.
I had to Google what the 40-40 club is.
But it's named after 40 home runs and 40 steals, which was done by Jose Canseco when he was on the juice. So do you get steroids when you walk in the front door?
I mean, if you can, I don't know. If it helps me hit 40 home runs in Major League Baseball, then I'm going to the 40-40 club, I guess.
Not to mention Jose Canseco had quite a few celebrities on his arms back in the day. Quite a few very pretty celebrity women.
He was no Jeter.
Is that where Alex Rodriguez went?
To get his steroids?
Yeah.
That's exactly where he went.
Right down the road, right?
Yeah, thank you, Caleb Giroux. Safe travels to Omaha. By the way, I will just tell you, Council Bluffs, Iowa, very nice casino, great buffet, very winnable tables. One of 2 casinos in the nation I walked away a winner. That in St. Louis.
So why don't you like St. Louis?
I won in St. Louis.
No, he's asking why you don't like St. Louis.
Why don't you like it?
I like St. Louis. I just don't like Missouri. And just go in there.
St. Louis is in Missouri.
Well, I know, but it's almost like it's different. The rest, I don't know. The whole state's lame. But St. Louis is good.
You must really hate Patrick Mahomes.
That's right. I can't stand him.